So this story was always crazy to me, especially since I was out there at the time, right? Um, I drove right into it, right? I got off of work and I'm going home and it's just wild police and they got they got the whole fucking street blocked off. They got a lot of streets blocked off. I had to um actually show my license to just keep, to be able to get past them and all that. Like, so it was real crazy out there at that time. And come to find out, you make it home and flick on the news and shit, and it's two cops murdered. You know, they had like 4 or 5 suspects, and they didn't have them, they didn't catch them right in the act. It just, it unfolded. You know what I mean? They caught one dude. I think in Brooklyn somewhere. Caught one dude dressed up as a female and shit. Like you don't hear all this online. This was going on in the local papers and shit. Like, so they eventually caught them all, and it was I think it was 4 or 5. I forgot, but I knew two of them. Like, personally knew them. Like, you know what I mean? Seen them around. Not a friend or anything, or not even anybody I kicked it with. Just actually went to school with one. So shit was crazy. Like, it was just crazy. Well, they eventually charged Ronell Wilson with, murder, and he got the death sentence. He got a federal death sentence. The first person in New York to get a federal death sentence. Anyway, we're gonna get into the story.
Normally quiet night, and the lives of two undercover cops were shattered by gunfire in a sting that went terribly wrong. The island was turned upside down as police officers from all over the city raced into neighborhoods from Stapleton to St. George in search of suspects responsible for killing two of their own.
This department and this city will not rest until those responsible for this barbaric act are found.
In the air and on the ground, the police left no stone unturned.
At approximately 8 o'clock this evening, 2 New York City police detectives were shot and killed during a gun-buy operation here on Staten Island.
According to Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly, two of New York's finest made a deal with 18-year-old Omar Green to buy a Tech-9 handgun. It was a deal that would cost the two police officers their lives.
They agreed to go forward with the deal. The two men in the lobby got into the back seat of the car with the undercover detectives, and over the cell phone, Omar directed them to drive.
From there, they drove through the streets of Tompkinsville in a black 2000 Nissan Maxima driven by one of the detectives. Tailing the Maxima were 3 unmarked police cars who were also listening in on the wireless microphones. It was at Victory Boulevard and Corson Avenue where things started to go wrong.
The detectives pulled the car to the curb. The backup detectives had to now regroup because the car had stopped.
One of the suspects stepped out of the Maxima to talk to Omar Green, who was in contact with the two suspects on a cell phone. When the suspect returned to the Maxima, the two detectives and the two suspects drove up Corson Avenue and turned onto Westervelt Avenue. It was then that the backup cars lost sight and contact with the Maxima. Fearing for safety of the two undercover cops, detectives in charge ordered a search of the neighborhood. Minutes later, police found the bodies of their two colleagues on St. Paul's Avenue and Hannah Place. Both were shot in the head. The two police officers were rushed by ambulance to St. Vincent's Hospital, where they were both pronounced dead.
And tonight, tragically, we grieve for these brave men and we pray for their families.
He was convicted of killing 2 undercover NYPD detectives in cold blood, including one from the island. Well, today, in a court packed with police officers, that cop killer was sentenced to death. News 12 Long Island's Antoinette Biordi was in the courtroom.
A Brooklyn judge sentenced Ronell Wilson to death for killing 2 NYPD detectives. One of those detectives was James Namorin from Baldwin Harbor. Now, Wilson told the families that he was sorry for what he did, but the families say it's too little, too late.
No, my son is dead. Saying sorry is not going to bring him back.
73-year-old Rodney Andrews Sr. was in court today when cop killer Ronell Wilson was sentenced. His son, NYPD detective Rodney Andrews Jr., was shot and killed by Wilson back in 2003, and so was NYPD detective James Namorin from Baldwin Harbor. Both victims' families and dozens of NYPD officers were also in court today. James Namorin's wife, Rose, who talked to News 12 back in July, did not want to talk today after the judge sentenced Wilson to death by lethal injection. NYPD officials say this was another step closer to true justice, while Wilson's attorney says the sentencing was pointless.
And most of all, it's a sad day because it solves nothing. The officer's family will continue to be bereaved at the loss of their loved ones. Instead of lessening anyone's pain, we cause another family, brothers, sisters, parents, aunts, and uncles to suffer.
I certainly hope that his execution will be carried out during my tenure as the president of the Detectives Endowment Association. And if they need someone to pull the switch, just ask.
But Rodney Andrews Sr. says true justice for him will be watching Wilson die.
When he's gone, that's closure.
The families weren't told exactly when Wilson's execution will be carried out, but he does have 14 days to appeal. In Brooklyn, Antoinette Biordi, News 12, Long Island.
A female prison guard in New York has been charged with sexually abusing a convicted killer whose child she is carrying. A visibly pregnant Nancy Gonzalez appeared briefly in court before a judge in Brooklyn before being released on bail. Inmates cannot legally consent to sex. The 29-year-old faces up to 15 years in prison if convicted. Ms. Gonzalez, who worked the night shift at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center, was accused of having a 4-month affair with Ronell Wilson that ended last August. Wilson was convicted for the 2003 murder of 2 New York City police officers. The execution-style murder of the 2 undercover officers led to the first federal death sentence passed in the city in more than a half-century. But the capital punishment order was overturned by a federal court in 2010, and he is awaiting his sentence before a new jury. Other prisoners told of his affair with Ms. Gonzalez, according to court files.